Hello, and welcome to another episode of Casting Views, a podcast with your hosts. I'm Dan, and I'm here with Lou, where we pick a topic each week and we'll cast our views on it. Now, before I go into what this topic is, Lou, I want to transport you, right? I want to take you to Canada, 2004, okay, where a Canadian woman, 84-year-old, was in the garden. She was weeding on her family farm, and she lost her wedding ring. And she kept it a secret from everyone. I think she told her son. But then 13 years later, her daughter-in-law was pulling up carrots from the farm, the ground in the farm, and you'll never believe it, but you know where it's going. This carrot had the wedding ring on it. This carrot had grown through the wedding ring, and as she pulled it out the ground, it was discovered. So I want to talk about amazing coincidences or amazing events. Now, the reason I chose this is because of something that you mentioned, a story you mentioned in the last podcast about gaming. But yeah, it's just events or things where it shouldn't happen but do.
Stars aligning kind of
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. I mean, come on, she lost the wedding ring, and then 13 years later, yeah.
I mean, that's a really long extent to go to for the sake of not liking your wedding ring and wanting a new one.
Well, the thing is, she was so embarrassed or so worried that she actually went out and bought a cheap one to replace it because she was so worried. I'd ask you, and also anyone listening, to check out, have a look at the story. Just say a woman finds long lost ring on carrot, and see the picture of the ring on the carrot. It's amazing.
No, it's a cool family heirloom as well, isn't it? That's just a great story.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just that it had to grow through that carrot, and I mean, what if it was a potato? I mean, I don't know how would that have worked. I've got a couple of examples actually in real life that I want to talk about. So that's what I'm bringing to the podcast. Now, I know you will know this first one, but I don't know if you know fully the all kind of like the details. I want to assure people listening this is absolutely true story. I think we've mentioned before that our families are Italian.
Yeah.
My parents, both Italian, came over to England in, I think it was sort of towards the end of the 60s, early 70s. So my dad, he was quite young when he came over. He was 17. And his family, he's got, he had quite a big family. I think when he was quite young and was still in Italy, some of his family moved away. So I think one of his uncles, they moved to a different town. Going back to one of our other episodes, they didn't have Facebook, Twitter, MySpace,
Yeah,
Bebo,
none of that.
whatever. So there was no way of keeping in touch. So lost touch with family. Anyway, fast forward to, I think it was what? It was probably about 10 years ago or so now. My uncle was having some visitors over from Italy for this business event, this association event. And a couple of people were going to go to his house for dinner. And my aunt said, my dad's sister said, "Do you want to come round and be part of this dinner? Have a chat with these people." My dad went, and you remember my dad, don't you? Your granddad, he was always one for talking. Loved
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
loved the chat, loved the conversation. And because they came from Italy and they were Italian, he was saying, "Oh, where'd you come from?" And this guy said to my dad, "Oh, I had an uncle in England, and his name was Nicola." And my dad said, "Oh, but that's the name of my dad," and they started talking, and they were saying they kind of knew they found they were kind of grew up in the same area or knew the same people. My dad was saying, "Are you sure your uncle isn't my dad?" And this guy was saying, "No, no, it can't be, no way." So my dad went home, got an old photo album, brought it back to the dinner, showed a photo, and this guy saw his parents in it, and it was my dad's cousin. My dad's dad was the brother of this bloke's mum, and it was just amazing. Now the thing was, like I said, his cousin moved. His uncle moved town when he was quite young. He was already a few years older than my dad, I think. And then my dad came to England, like I said, when he was 17. So they never knew each other, never spoke. But yeah, this guy's face apparently just dropped when he saw in the photo album, saw his mum and dad. From then on, my dad and his cousin, almost like we're great friends. It's like they lost however many years. And I just think to myself, okay, in this world, anything is possible. But for these two people, firstly, for this, this guy, my dad's cousin, to be the person coming over for this event,
Randomly, yeah.
then for my aunt to say to my dad, "Oh, do you want to come to have dinner as well to be with these people?" And then, for them to then just start randomly talking about, well, I guess you probably would start talking about family. I just think it's kind of blowing my mind. And the fact then that they then, remained kind of the best of friends.
Yeah.
And I think it's what we said before about in the social media one, the good that social media does is that, and actually, yeah, it absolutely backs up what I said, is that you can now keep in touch. God, imagine the hijinks they would have got up to if they grew up together, and
And known each other before.
yeah, and like I said, this is always something that will stay with me. My dad passed away now, what? It was 8 years ago now.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's the chances of that one particular person striking the conversation up and then realizing, well, actually, we're actually related.
Yeah, but I think to even add that extra layer of, "Oh, wow," kind of amazingness to it. So it was a bloke and a woman who came over for this event, but it wasn't they weren't a couple, it was just it was basically it was the woman who was coming over for the event, and I think she asked this guy to come over with her as well, so he shouldn't,
Right.
if I understood, he shouldn't have even been over for it. Could you imagine? Imagine if you went to someone's house. Let's say you've gone to France and you've gone to someone's house for dinner, and they're saying, "Oh, do you think we could be related?" They go pull out a photo album, you see your mum and dad, or
Mum
you
and
see
dad in the
maybe me, or
photos.
or you see me in their photo or something. It's
I'm
just
like, hang on a minute.
yeah. For me, like I said, yes, the world is small, but I also add into the fact that it's from a different country. It's not even as if we're saying it's from within this country. It's like I said, I'm finding it difficult to get the words out. A lot of things, like you said, had to line up for this to be perfect. My dad could have said, "No, I'm busy,"
Yeah, yeah.
or "I don't want to go," or maybe that it was a quiet dinner. They didn't talk about it, and they just didn't want to talk about personal things.
But that's the thing. If he'd have said no, that would have been that. You would have never have ever had that experience. He would have never have had that link with that cousin again, and life would have gone on, never even knowing that potentially somebody who you were related to was 5 minutes down the road that
Yeah,
you never even knew existed.
yeah. Or imagine if it wasn't sort of 5 minutes from Dad's house and he couldn't get that photo album.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think it's got to be so weird. Like I said, that you've flown to a different country, you're in a stranger's house, and then someone shows you a photo of your family. I know it's
It's a bit
bizarre.
serial killerish if there's no context behind it. It's like, hang on a minute, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's proper. What's the word? Multiverse.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like the Marvel universe brought to life.
Did you knew this story,
Yeah,
didn't
I
you?
think I kind of half knew the story, but I didn't realize there were so many factors that went into it. I know that my grandfather had obviously, or nonno for
Yeah,
those Italian
yeah,
listeners, um, had met a cousin at this dinner, but I didn't know all of the fact that it wasn't even like a family thing. I thought it was people that knew each other from towns that had come over and that sort of thing, but it wasn't. It's just like a business thing, and they just happened to be on this strip, and you shouldn't have even been there in the first place.
yeah. It's kind of like I don't know. To be honest, I don't really know how to explain it properly, but it's like this Italian association, which our uncle. It wasn't. My dad was. My dad wasn't part of it, but my uncle was. And like I said, I think they would have our uncle or my uncle would go over there, and then sometimes there would be things over here. So yeah, I knew roughly the story. I was at my mum's earlier, and I just wanted to make sure I had all the facts straight. The bit I didn't know, yeah, the bit I didn't know was the bit about sort of dad going to get the photo album. I think that's brilliant. It's like, no, we are related. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
we will.
I'm definitely right. I know you.
I'm always trying to put myself in that bloke's mind. I'm thinking, was he at what point did he think, yeah, I think I should go now?
Yeah, he's just like this bloke's a little bit weird.
Yeah, it's like and I can imagine my dad driving home. I'm going to prove it to him. I'll show him. Yeah.
He would have ripped through photo albums as well. There would have been 60 albums upstairs. He would have been dragging through photos to be like, I'm finding these people in these pictures.
I can't remember the album. I mean, I didn't see the picture, so I don't know if he was in it himself, as in the cousin. But yeah, I mean, of course, he recognises his mum and dad. I just think about all the intricacies. What if they didn't go to their house for dinner? What if they just had the meeting wherever it was? My dad wouldn't have gone to that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to say it can't happen now, because I mean, you hear stories all the time about potentially like twins who have been put up for adoptions and get separated, then find each other years later. I think it's almost harder with the communication. And, and we're talking about sort of like, again in the 60s. And because obviously, because it's personal to, myself and you, it makes it that bit more sort of special and
Special.
amazing,
Yeah, yeah,
because I know it's true. I was there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I actually remember the day that my dad went there to do that.
And he would have come home and been like, I met my cousin today. I never knew he existed. You would be like, yeah, shut up. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I think I was like, "No, come on." No. And, and again, because my dad used to kind of like a wind up as well. But yeah, no, like I said, I mean, even now, sort of my mum still speaks to the cousins. So I think as amazing coincidences go, I think that's one. I'm going to give it a 10 for wow factor.
Do you know? Do you know what you've also done? You've also reinforced the fact that reinforced the stereotype that Italians all know each other somehow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, do you know? Do you know when you get that thing where people say, "Oh, this person's Italian, you must know them." I'm like, I don't know.
I've also modified the way I tell the story, because I used to say, "Oh yeah, my uncle's part of this Italian organisation that goes across Europe," and it's like, and
And
the
then,
looks you get, and I'm like, "No, no, no, yeah, yeah, okay, okay, it was a business meeting."
yeah, branching overseas.
Probably makes it sound worse. Just because it's personal, I'm giving it a well rating of 10. But I think it would. I think if anyone was telling me that story, my first instinct would be, "No way, get out of it." In a world where anything is possible, I think it's still great that you can still be surprised. I mean, like I said, it's not impossible for two people to meet, right? And like I said, just the combination of
The combination of all the things that needed to align.
even just as simple as saying no, he was already going somewhere else. That's is it Sliding Doors? Have you ever seen the film Sliding Doors?
Oh, I don't think so.
I
Must be
think
before
it's
my time.
oh, get out of it. It's in color, so it's
Oh, all right, fair enough.
if I remember right, it was Gwyneth Paltrow, and it was a film about the same characters, but a decision, and I can't remember what it was. It must have involved sliding doors, but a decision, and it shows how it pans out on each side of that decision, if you know what I mean. So it's like
Oh, a bit like the butterfly effect.
kind of, yeah. So yeah, so it's like you've got a decision to make. Do you go do you say yes to this person? Do you say no to this person? And it shows what happens on each of those. So how your life would have been
Right,
different.
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's the thing as well. Like I talked to my like mates that I met at uni, and obviously, like you think to yourself, oh, you had a really group of mates meeting at uni. It's like, what if you'd have picked a different room where you'd have lived? You would have never even known that they'd have existed. And that's the thing. Like, it really is weird sometimes when you look at things that have happened in your life and think the culmination of events that it took to get me to this point all had to be perfect for me to be in this situation.
Is your best friend in the building next to you, but you never cross paths with them because you're not in the same course as them, and you don't live in the same building as them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just as a caveat as well to any of my friends listening to this, I'm glad that I picked the room where we met. By the way, wouldn't trade any of you.
Yeah, don't worry, I edited the other bit out. It's fine.
Right, I've got some coincidences, and I think the wow factor scale is the way that we're going to rank them. Then,
Okay, okay,
so you might have heard of a couple of them. So I've got three kind of main ones. Now, the first one is the coincidences between Kennedy and Lincoln, the two American presidents.
okay, yeah,
I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but basically it happened. It all kind of came about in the press after Kennedy's assassination about all of the facts that basically linked the two presidents together. Now, there's a list basically of coincidences with regard to their assassinations and that sort of thing. And I know that this one's a bit dark, but we are really running on this theme where I do
yeah.
the dark, sadistic stuff, and you're like the peppy one that will like pick people up, but that's fine. So obviously, both of them were assassinated. But as a bit of a precursor, both of them were elected to Congress in years 46, Lincoln in 1846, Kennedy in 1946. Both
Okay,
became president in the years 60, Lincoln elected in 1860 and Kennedy elected in 1960. Both had seven letters in their last names. So, that one, but that could be kind of anything. Both married in their 30s to women in their 20s. Again, maybe not so much, but, still a coincidence. Both lost a son while living in the White House. Lincoln had an 11-year-old son, and Kennedy lost an infant son. Both sons' names had 21 letters in each,
Wow.
with each having 7 letters in their first, middle, and last name.
Wow. Wow.
Both were shot on a Friday. Both were shot in the head. Both were shot in the presence of their wives, and both were assassinated by Southerners. Both of their successors were named Johnson, with Lincoln succeeded by Andrew Johnson and Kennedy succeeded by Lyndon B. Johnson. Both were succeeded by Southerners. Both were successors were born in '08. So Andrew Johnson was born in 1808. Lyndon B. Johnson was born in 1908. Both assassins, John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, as we obviously know them, are all known by their 3 names. And each assassin's name is composed of 15 letters. And this is the best one, I think, because Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theatre and Kennedy was shot in a Ford car.
Oh, wow. Wow. I think we should go through them to rank them. But there was something you said then. You might jog my memory as we go through it. But there are some really good ones in there. Some are slight stretches.
Yeah,
Um,
I think some are stretches as well, like the kids' names and that sort of thing. But the fact that they were both elected in the same, both elected to Congress in the same year, both elected to presidency in the same year, I think is quite interesting. Both of them losing a son while in the White House.
that actually, I was going to say. I mean, it's sad.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
was going to say it's interesting in the sense of I wasn't sure how old they were, so I was thinking, well, if they're old, could it be that there was some? But the fact that one was 11 and one was an infant, I mean, that's tragic, and that shouldn't happen, and you wouldn't expect that to happen, would you? So,
yeah. I mean, both of them being shot on a Friday. I guess. Well, I guess there's only 7 days in a week, maybe.
so they were both shot and both on a Friday. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that is really, really unusual. Unless like Fridays are you walk about, grab a gun day. I don't know, but it's
I don't know how it worked in America at the time.
but but I think no, for me that's a standout one. I think.
That's pretty impressive. And then both the successors being named Johnson's pretty impressive. And the fact
Uh,
that both Johnsons were born again 100 years apart is pretty impressive, I think, as well.
that's actually before we go, and that's the one that you got me thinking. So we've had on a similar vein here in football or soccer, we support Tottenham Hotspur, don't we? And we sold a player called Kyle Walker,
Yeah.
and then we bought a player in straight away called Kyle Walker Peters. Do you
Yeah,
remember that?
yeah, I remember
And
that.
I just wanted to sell him on, so we then got Kyle Walker Peter Jones or something, and see how long we could continue that. So yeah, that's what triggered in my mind when you said that. Sorry, sorry,
And then
go on.
the only final point to this as well is with regard to the assassins, because both of them were also assassinated before their trials.
Yeah, well, that's going back to the conspiracy, so that might not be as coincidental as you might think
Yeah,
on that
that's true. But
one.
that's all. That I think that one's pretty impressive. I think the fact that 2 presidents were both assassinated. I mean, the chances of a president being assassinated, I don't know what the odds are. But again, the fact that it was same years, 100 years
Yeah,
apart, successors, 100 years apart exactly, same days of the week, same instances of like family bereavement. It's almost like they were cursed and connected at the same
yeah.
time.
And you said the same year of birth, so '08, did you say?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, that's sorry, no, what were their years of birth? Yeah,
yeah. So what for the successors?
yeah,
That was 1808 and 1908.
90. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So each of those you could take and say some of them, like I said, are a bit of a stretch, but kind of like the previous one we just discussed with Dad. If if you've got a lot of them, at what point does it become like, oh, that's a coincidence? That's a coincidence. To yeah, something's going on here.
Also, just as a little one with regard to the car as well, because obviously Lincoln shot in Ford's theatre, Kennedy was shot in a Ford car, and it was a Lincoln limousine. And Kennedy also had a female secretary named Lincoln.
That's weird, isn't it?
With this one, I'm actually pretty impressed with this one. I think this one's quite cool. I don't know if it's again stars aligning. Maybe it was just history repeating itself. Do you know, like you get a glitch in the Matrix? It doesn't come out quite right. A bit like deja vu, where something doesn't come out just quite right, exactly the way it was, but it's history repeating itself.
That's what it is. What makes this one good is that because there was so much time between them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not like, even in like the 60s, there were a couple of assassinations. But it's just like everything was almost, was it 100 years apart? Did you say?
Yeah, yeah, 100 years.
I think that is, yeah, it's just like that's a cycle that's repeating, like you said. I think to me that's what makes it the wow.
It's almost like the person, if there's something that controls the universe, didn't flip the cassette round and they just put it on repeat.
Yeah,
That's kind of like what's happened with this one.
made a dodgy knockoff recording,
Yeah,
bootleg
bootleg
copy.
sequel.
Yeah,
What do you reckon? What are you giving that one out of 10?
it's a hard one because, like I said, some of them seem like they are coincidences that could happen. So they were both, in a position of power, which attracts people. We've seen assassinations and
Yeah,
attempts at assassinations. The amount of letters in the surname, well, that's cool. But I think once you then start adding everything, like for me, again, they're both sad things, but the children dying in office, both being assassinated on a Friday,
yeah, yeah.
and linked to the assassination, that is an interesting one about did you say the Ford Theatre and the Ford car?
Yeah, so it was a Ford, and further to that, it was a Lincoln limousine.
Yeah, and did you say the secretary called Lincoln?
Secretary Evelyn Lincoln.
I'm gonna give that, I think that's up there. I'm gonna give it. My head is saying 8.
I'm also giving it an 8, and that's well annoying because it seems like I've copied you now, but I promise I haven't. Because I think there are some coincidences in there that are actually really, really strange. However, there's some that are kind of just bodged together. Like the letters in the name thing, it's like, well, how long can a name be really? Like at the time as well, like those ones I'm kind of now. I'm not about those ones.
But again, it's the amount of similarity. So what would be interesting is, I don't know, take Obama and take one of the presidents 100 years before Obama, and are there coincidences, similar coincidences
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
But it is the fact that, it's not like you reeled one or two things off. It was about six, seven, eight.
yeah, yeah,
And that's
yeah.
that's then what puts it, like I said, for me, puts it up there.
Well, what we'll do then is we'll use that as like the baseline for the ones moving forward,
Okay, okay,
because then we know what to kind of judge against as well. So the second one that I've got is a lady called Violet Constance Jessup. Lovely name.
okay.
And her nickname was the Queen of Sinking Ships or Miss Unsinkable. And that's because she survived the sinking of the Titanic, the sinking of the sister ship, the Britannic, and she was also on board the RMS Olympic when it collided with a British warship.
Now she could either this is either an amazing coincidence or she's just very lucky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the thing. I don't know if this is coincidence because it's coincidence, but horrific coincidence or really lucky coincidence, depending on the way that you look at it. So it was 1911, and she was a stewardess on the RMS Olympic, and it was basically a luxury ship, obviously. And There were no fatalities, but that one was when it made it back to port, basically, and it was just collided with a warship, basically. So there were no fatalities, but it was a boat crash. So you wouldn't be terribly put off of ships, I guess, at that point, because no collisions. It didn't necessarily sink. Absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
The problem came a year later in 1912 when she was a stewardess on the Titanic. And she survived the sinking of the Titanic. She was basically ordered onto a lifeboat, and they gave her a baby to look after. Funnily enough, is a quite cool point to the story. They were rescued by the Carpathia, and then were taken to New York. So she survived that, and then the Britannic. She was on board it, and this was the younger sister ship of the Titanic that had been converted into a hospital ship, and it sank after basically just an unexplained explosion.
Was she working on that one as well?
Yeah, she was a stewardess on that one as well.
Okay, okay.
But with the Britannic, it was killed 30 of 1,066 people, so there wasn't many fatalities in comparison to obviously the Titanic.
Yeah, I mean,
But
for
yeah,
me, it's not even about the fatalities, which I don't mean that to sound bad on the fatalities. If I'm taking this as an example of our theme, I think as with any mode of transport, so we know air accidents happen, we know vehicle accidents happen. So a boat or a ship, there's going to be X percentage or X chance of it encountering an issue or having a crash, right?
yeah, yeah,
If she was working on them, what we don't know is, say, how many ships did she go on or how many voyages did she go on. But the fact that 3 of these things happened to her and she was able to survive them all, I think that again, to me, it's the accumulation of them all. I was gonna call her unlucky, but no, of course she's lucky because she survived them all.
Do you know what this kind of reminds me of? Do you know what's that? You know what? This is awful that I don't know this, but it'll come back to me. Final Destination.
Oh, right,
Do
yes,
you
yeah,
know when
yeah,
death is like knocking on the door because it is desperate to get to you?
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
at the point where you're just like, this is kind of the coincidence where it's like, I don't think I'm supposed to be working on ships. Do you know what the funniest thing is as well? She actually went to return to work for White Star Line in 1920. So
yeah. Oh,
even the
really?
three even the three incidents didn't put her off, which I think is brilliant, obviously.
Yeah, but would you hire
Well,
her?
yeah, this is the thing. I turn around and be like, hang on a minute. I'd be like, the last three that you've served on have all hit the deck.
At first, I was thinking, "Oh my word, if you knew, you'd wanna be as far away from her as possible." But then I'm thinking, "No, if you're on the same ship as her, you'd wanna
You
be
want to stay
right
next to
next
her?
to her." Yeah, yeah.
I go where you go.
Yeah, I think again, I'm probably gonna rate it slightly less than the previous one, but only just. I might give it a 7 just because these things can happen, but it's the fact that, like I said, that she went once and twice, 3 times in a lifetime. I think that is what would make this an unusual story.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to rank it higher than the Kennedy one, and I'm going to give
Okay.
this a 9. And that's only because I think, when people talk about like plane travel nowadays, for instance, they're like, it's one of the safest ways to travel. What are the likelihood of instances? I don't actually know what the percentage chance of being on a sinking ship back in the 1910s was, but I just think it's like lottery astronomical level to be on 3.
Yeah.
So I feel
Yeah.
like that is ridiculous. Like I feel like you'd be looking at life and think, you know what, I really need to make sure that I don't walk under ladders and I don't do this and I don't walk over drains because bad luck is actually coming for you.
Or would you think the opposite? Would you think you're almost, kinda like
Too lucky. Yeah,
unbreakable?
maybe you go
Yeah,
buy a lottery ticket.
or unbreakable? Would you think, like, you're untouchable? I don't know, would
Yeah, it does say here that she went on to be the first person to ever skydive, and she didn't do that. No,
without a parachute
without a
and
parachute and
yeah, yeah.
survive.
For it to happen once is unfortunate. For it to happen twice is really unfortunate, but to happen 3 times, I mean,
Yeah.
and she still went back. I mean,
Yeah, she still went back to work. I was just like, my God. I'd be like, imagine filling out the insurance form for staff for that. It's just turning around and being like, what's your previous experience? Oh, crashed.
yeah, nowhere near
the,
the
the,
engine
the
room, were
employee's
you?
like, I'm going to need more than that little tiny box that you're giving me to fill out my experience.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. I mean, fair play to her. I mean, like I said, it's to go back to do the same thing after the sea. I mean, even even though she survived, and we said that on one of them, it wasn't a huge kind of loss of life compared to what it could have been. I mean, it's still got to be a traumatic event.
And that's the thing as well, because the Titanic, you have to remember, was the second one, which was obviously one of the worst like ship disasters ever to have happened.
Yeah,
So you think about that, like we still look at the Titanic now. Obviously, the film's kind of immortalized the event in and of itself, but that was a horrific, horrific event. And then to go back, and then for that to happen again after that, I can't, I can, no, I'd be traumatized. You would be. But yeah, that's my second one. So I'm giving that one a 9. Right. Do you want my third one? My third one's relatively short, and this one's kind of a romantic coincidence. It's not romantic actually, because it's still someone dying, but it's kind of a romantic coincidence in the context and that sort of thing.
well, tell you what, let's do that. Then we'll go to mine, and then I want you to do the one you mentioned about in the gaming podcast because that's pretty
Oh
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got you. Okay, so this one is about Mark Twain
All right, okay, yep.
and Halley's Comet. So, Halley's Comet appeared in the sky the year he was born in 1835. Now, the comet moves in a 75 or 76-year orbit, and as it neared Earth again, Mark Twain was quoted as saying, I came in with Halley's Comet, it's coming again, and I expect to go out with it. The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together. Sure enough, he died on April 21st, 1910, just as the comet made its next appearance.
Wow, okay.
Now that is kind of predicting his own death in reality, and that one's quite scary, I think. But yeah, I think that do you know what it is? I really like that. Oh, no, I like that one. Literally talking
I
about the
know what
death
you
in
mean. No,
person.
I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
I really like that one because it's almost like poetic and romantic at the same time. because it's like he looked at the world and that was his destiny and it came to fruition.
Well, it's like
And that's why I like that one.
yeah, what brought him in, and that's what took him out. Not
Yeah.
literally,
This,
but
I
not
mean,
literally. Yeah.
the only way it could have been a little bit scarier would have been if Halley's comet had orbited into Earth and then hit him.
Yeah, well,
Maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there'd be a bigger story around that. I think. I mean, the logical part of me says, well, if it's every 75 years, that would mean he was 75, 76, which is a good age, and the age that probably people do start to experience issues of shuffling the mortal coil to also be poetic. Again, it's just like you said, it's the fact that there was a rarish event that a lot of people only see once. Once you can see it once, twice in your lifetime. To be born on the day that that comet goes, but then the same person. I mean, there must be loads of people that are born when Halley's comet comes around, right? There must be loads of people that die when it comes around, but to have a birth and a death on that.
Yeah. I just found out he died of a heart attack. But again, maybe at the time, people's life expectancy was probably there or there about 75 in reality, because this is early 1900s, isn't it? And the next expected sighting, just for anybody wondering, of Halley's Comet is the 28th of July, 2061.
Wow. Okay, 40 years. Oh, let's hope
Yeah.
I get to see it then. Tune into the podcast. What day did you say it was?
Tune in on our episode 28th of July 2061, where we'll be doing this by holographic projection and giving you our live reaction to Halley's Comet.
Maybe by then, again, people won't see this, and we said before maybe we should start recording as soon as we log on. But yeah, maybe by then we'll be able to start recording as soon as we jump in and not have issues with either headsets or microphones. Okay, that's cool. I think it has slightly less of a wow factor than the last two you've said, I think, but only because the last two have had so many. Like again, the president one, there was about 10 different things. Your previous one, there were three big tragedies that somebody was part of and walked away from them all. This one, like I said, I think again logically, I want to say, well, he was 75, and that comet just happened to be passing by on the same day. But it is pretty special. The reason why I still think it's decent. For me, anything above a 6 is good, right? Really good.
Yeah.
It's the fact that he was born and died when that comet made its appearance. Yeah, that's pretty funky. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Just again for kind of like the poetic beauty of it, I think I'm giving this one an 8, because I think it's cool as well the fact that those words, in terms of like those words are kind of like immortalized with you because it's the prediction that you gave and it actually did come true almost.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that
yeah.
that's quite a cool thing. So I'm giving it an 8. I think.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, we're there or thereabouts together, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
my next one is again another personal story. So, sort of well, I say a few years ago. I reckon it's about 10, 12 years ago.
A few years ago.
Yeah, yeah, 10 or 12 years ago. Me and my girlfriend, we were on holiday, and we sort of went on a couple of the group holidays. We went on a couple of these like adventure type holidays. So we went as part of a group. You wouldn't know the others. There'd be like 10 people on a group, and we went to Ecuador. You know me, I like chatting to people. I like making friends with people. So I tend to try, as long as people are up for it, try to talk to everyone and make friends with them. There was this guy from South Africa. He was called Malcolm. I'll never forget, really nice guy. At the end of the holiday, we say goodbye. He obviously went home to South Africa. We came back home to good old England. Then it was either a year or 2 years later, myself and my partner, we went to Argentina. And on the last day of the holiday, we had an earlyish flight. I think we were leaving the hotel about 11 o'clock. And we thought, right, in AM. We thought, right, we're not going to get up to anything. So we'll just wake up a bit late, chill, have a late breakfast, and then check out and go. And we were having breakfast, and your mind's already set to go in, so you're in a bit of a downer. We were just sitting there silently eating our breakfast. Literally, just as we were getting up to go back to our room, hear someone call my name. Hold on, I don't know anyone over here, right? Turn round, turn round, and it was that guy. It was Malcolm from the previous holiday. He had just flown in to that hotel. He was doing the same holiday we were, so we were going out, and he'd just come in. And so we had a quick chat, and it was brilliant. I mean, like I said, as they go, they're not. It's not necessarily spectacular, but it's just the fact of, again, of all the people and all the times. I mean, we could have done that holiday a week earlier, we wouldn't have seen him. We could have done it a few weeks later, wouldn't have seen him. We could have chosen to have breakfast at a different time and we wouldn't have seen him. And it's just the fact that someone we met on a random holiday, it's like you said, sort of who you end up in digs with at uni, right? We ended up on that group on one holiday with him, and then he ends up in the restaurant of the hotel that we're at, and sort of remembers us, sort of said hello, and again, then I remember the next holiday we went on, I kept looking around for him, just seeing him.
Where's Malcolm?
Yeah. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, like I said, it's not necessarily as good as my first one or a couple of yours, but I think it's a pretty cool one. I think it's pretty
I
good.
think that one's good though, because the chances of bumping, like, let's say, like, again, even the chance of just having like enough conversation with a person on these group. I don't know how many people were kind of on them, but even just being, close enough to have chats with them and get to know them and that sort of thing, and then by chance happening to bump into one on a completely how long away, how far apart? Sorry, did you say the holidays were?
The less it would have been a year. At most, I reckon 2, possibly 3 years, but no
But
more than that. So
because the thing is as well, even to take the same trips, like you've been to a lot of countries in the world. Maybe we should do a podcast episode on that as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Travel recommendations.
possibly. Yeah.
um, but even to have picked the same then destinations and to bump into the same stranger that you met on a holiday, maybe potentially 3 years prior, I think that's actually a pretty cool one.
I hadn't even seen him. I think he was behind me. So if he hadn't have seen us or picked us up or called out, I would have walked out and we wouldn't have even had that
Yeah,
encounter. But it's the fact that he saw us, recognized us and called us. Otherwise, if he'd have sat with his back to us, the thing is that would have been probably even cooler, but we would never have known. So we could have been
yeah.
sitting next to each other or be, behind each other, not even, never have known and go off on our merry ways. I mean, we may have even he may have come over here. Who knows? He may have come to England a couple of times and
Did you never stay in touch with this bloke?
we did. I think so because he lived in South Africa, we exchanged because we thought, oh, if we ever go over there. So we had a few emails with him when we came back, but that was it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we didn't offend him or anything, or he didn't offend us in it. For me, what it is one, it's like I said, it's that encounter on the first holiday. Then we are in two separate countries where we live, and then we've gone to another third country at the same time, at a random time later. Yeah, I just again, it's like, possibly it could happen, but come on, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And even the fact that he recognised you.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind
yeah,
of like this. This is what I mean. In reality, let's like you both sets of you would have travelled plenty of times in between. Obviously, the
yeah,
two
yeah,
of you meeting again, and again, even the fact that he recognised you in the middle of this place. Because sometimes do you ever walk down the street and kind of do a double take at someone being like, oh, I know them, but you don't do anything. You don't register it in your mind properly. Again, he could have done that. He could have looked at you and thought, he looks familiar, but I don't know.
yeah. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't think I would have had the guts to do that. If it was in you go somewhere in your own country. Now, obviously, like America is massive, our country is a lot smaller. But say we went on a domestic trip to Scotland and we met someone there. If I then was in the next town over from here, I saw them, I might try say, oh, have a look,
Yeah,
say, oh,
yeah.
I don't think I would be that is brave enough in another country, like in a different continent, to see someone I met for 10 days 2 years earlier.
Because your mind would automatically be like, nah, not them.
The thing is, say it was a couple of years, I probably still remember what it looks like now, but your mind always sort of plays tricks and probably fills in gaps that aren't there. And so it probably, I'd probably go up to someone and probably would have ended up being detained by the police, So, but no, you are him.
Yeah, yeah. You be, and they're like, who the fuck are you?
Someone starts, he speaks nothing but Spanish. No, you are Malcolm. I guess you got nothing to lose. You shout out a name. If the people turn around, they turn around. But it was just more like for me. I thought, who knows me here? It's almost like, hello, what's going on?
Yeah, that one's quite cool. I'm actually going to give you a 9 for that one.
Oh, okay, all right, cool.
I'm giving you a 9 for that one because I think again the chances of meeting in a wholly different country, the fact that he even recognised you, the fact that you were due to leave and he'd literally just walked in, I think that's pretty cool set of coincidences.
Say that wasn't our last day and he'd flown in, we'd normally be out sort of like 8 a.m. because we want to get stuff done. We want to go
Yeah,
see things. But because it was the last day, we just slummed about a little bit. We just took it easy. What's the point when you've got to be out the hotel at like 10 or 11? So yeah, it was
yeah,
just that combination of things that led up to bumping into him.
yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's a wicked one.
I did have again on a similar one. I just again it was on another holiday, but it was in a random place. It was in the Maldives. I remember we got to the airport. We're in the queue, and I think my girlfriend, I think she was probably at the check-in desk sorting something out, and I was just standing because it was a tiny. Like I said, if my memory serves me right, don't underestimate how small it was. It's not like Heathrow, and I was just looking out the door, and this woman walks past, and I thought, "Gosh, she looks so familiar." And I thought, "No." And I thought, "I know who she is." And I thought, "No, it can't be. Absolutely not." And then the guy walks in behind her, would have been her husband, and right, there was no mistaking him, and I'll say why in a minute. I thought, That's the parents of who was my best friend at school." Now, this was probably 20 years later. Again, go back to the social media episode, listen to it if you haven't. I hadn't spoken to him for years because he moved away, he did his own thing. I moved away, did my own thing. And I thought, my God, those are his parents. And then literally, no joke, 2 minutes after he walks in, right? And I thought, right, a woman that potentially looks like his mum, okay, could be a lookalike. A bloke that walks in after that woman that looks like his mum and looks exactly like his dad, right? And the reason I said this, and I don't think it's a bad thing to say, but he looked like. Do you remember the Italian ref, Kalina? Similar
Oh
vibe,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I thought, yeah, yeah, that's definitely him. And then to see then your mate walk in, or what was your best friend at school. And then we were on then the same. It was a connecting flight. We were literally about 4 or 5 rows apart. And again, and it was like, yes, you can meet anyone, can go anywhere, at the time, anyone could go anywhere in the world, and they could, just like I was there, they could be there. But again, it's the being there at that same time as us, me looking at the door, and like I said, seeing this woman walk in. And if I hadn't, because we were six or so rows behind, we would have been on the plane. We would have sat down. Would I have seen them? Possibly when they were getting on, but because it was only like a 40-minute flight, maybe an hour. I can't remember. There's a chance wouldn't have seen them necessarily on the plane, and then we were getting different flights. So yeah,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
bumping into like a family. Oh, and again, linking to another podcast that's actually not aired as we're recording this, but it's about our history in gaming. Again, check that one out. Do you remember in that I mentioned I used to go to a mate's house and bring my Commodore Amiga around in a huge rucksack? It was his house. It was his house.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Pete. Yeah,
Oh
again, and
right,
I just
right,
found it bizarre because I thought of all the places to bump into someone, yeah, in a tiny airport on the other side of the world. I think, yeah, it was pretty cool.
right. I'm giving that one a good rating as well. I think that I'm ranking that on the same one as The Stranger. Only because as well, this one was the Maldives and it's small, like even when you say connecting flight, I imagine the plane was relatively.
Just the airport itself was small, so the chance of bumping into someone there, if you're there, is probably higher than, like I said, at Heathrow or Gatwick.
Oh, that's yeah, I guess that's true. But the destination in and of
Yeah,
itself
yeah.
is probably a bit
The
mad,
fact that I hadn't
really.
seen them for so long, it was just the thoughts go through my brain when, like I said, I saw his mum walk in. I said, "Oh my God, that looks just like Pete's mum from back in the day." And then it's like, "Oh my God, that looks like Pete's dad, but that has to be his dad." I said, "That's if it's not, cloning has been achieved, right?" Because it was him. And then when I saw him, and I thought that, oh my God, this is it. And so I literally, I probably ran right over to them and just said, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I remember going up to them on the
See,
plane and talking to them on the plane then after.
I thought the thought that would you gone through your head would have been like, "Oh my god, it's Pete's mum," and then you would have been like, "Oh my god, Pierre Luigi Collina." Like, of all the people.
For me, it's a nice one for me because I think it just shows that you think things are impossible, but it kind of goes back to like my dad meeting his cousin. It's just amazing sets of coincidence that, I don't bump into him here. This country, you're only like 4 or 5 hours from most places, right? from where
Yeah,
we
yeah,
are.
it's true actually. Yeah,
So you know, I've never bumped into him sort of here.
yeah. No, I think that I'm probably giving that one a
Okay,
9. To
I'll
be
take that.
fair,
Thank you.
I think I rate that one again, just because as well with the Maldives isn't necessarily a common destination for anyone in and of itself, and obviously to be on the same flight the same day to see them all again after so many years, I think that one's quite cool. And also, it's like personal sentiment as well, so I'm going to give you the point
That's
for
it. I
that.
think to finish, I think that's exactly it. Because I mean, could have been a later flight. They could have been on a day earlier. We could have been a day later. But it's not. We were on the same bloody flight. You know, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Did you say you had a bonus one?
Ah, do you want? Sorry, do you want the Xbox one again? Right. So if you didn't listen to our podcast where we talked about gaming, number one, why have you not? You should have done. And number two, the reason that this has all been sparked off is because of something I mentioned during gaming. I used to play PlayStation 3, and Call of Duty World at War was my game. Loved that game. Dedicated. 65 days game time in the space of a year. Spent a quarter of my life on that game. That one calendar year. And I met a guy playing online, and I remember he had I actually think I remember the gamer tag still. I think his gamer tag was Veodi or something, like VEADI or something along those lines. It was something along the lines. And we used to play Call of Duty World at War together. Never met the person. Probably about the same age as me. Do you know, like 14, 15 at the time. You just play games with people you meet online. And then obviously that game finished. I moved on to Xbox. Never had any PlayStation accounts or anything. And then it was only when Call of Duty World War II came out. Again, really like that game because I like the style of the game. And then I remember being in a lobby with someone that had the same gamer tag, and I was sat there. I was like, like, surely not. I was like, I remember that name. I remember that name. And I sent a message just randomly to this person. And I just by chance said, I was like, look, I used to play Call of Duty World at War, and I've got the same gamer tag that I did. I was like, are you the guy that I used to play with? I basically expanded on what we used to play, what game modes, that sort of thing. And they legitimately sent me a message back being like, yeah, it was you. That's fucking amazing. I was like, unbelievable. I was like, of all the lobbies to be in, like, of all of the hundreds of thousands of games that are loaded up on Call of Duty, to be randomly matched with my former partner was brilliant.
See, and the reason I wanted you to say this one was because one, I didn't know about this until you said it in the last episode. So, and two, because it's gaming, I love gaming. Xbox, you're still not following me. I know you haven't heard the gaming one, but you must have heard the social media one. So, you know, sort it out. And if I remember right, I think you and your dad loved that game, didn't you? And I think weren't you pretty much like the lone warriors, right? Almost at the end of the lobbies before they like probably disconnected the servers.
Oh yeah, yeah. I played that. I rinsed the ever loving hell
I
out of
think I
that
remember like
game.
your dad almost making it sound quite romantic. That it was like literally just a handful of you left at the end, you know, seeing the battle out. But no, I love this, and the reason why I love it is one, I think it's a common theme. Just like I love your analogy about uni. It's when online gaming is even more random with who you're pitted against, right? Because it's people around the world. It's not just, you know, uni, there is a physical building that can only have a certain amount of people and you're going to be one of them, whereas online gaming, you could be in a local lobby, it could be European, is it North American, it's anyone in the world, right? Two, you've transferred systems, right? You've gone from
Yeah,
PlayStation to
yeah,
Xbox. Now I think when I had a PlayStation, I don't think I had the same name tag, gamer tag. I think I used a different one. So if that was me, that would never have happened with it. Or if you change your gamer tag, or if he changed his gamer tag, wouldn't have happened.
yeah, yeah.
So you've changed systems, kept your gamer tags, you've then ended up in the same game. And so
Amazing.
I really like that. So again, I'm for me, I'm giving it a high one. I'm giving it a 9 because it ticks all the boxes for me. It's gaming, it's personal, it's happened to you. You know, like I said, it's what are the odds, like you said, for you both to get an Xbox and then both to keep the same gamer tag and then both meet each other? I think that's brilliant. I think it's brilliant.
I know the uniqueness of the gamer tag. Thank God I was creative with it.
And I can't, you know, you'd have to look, Vayodi or whoever, please, you know, we're going to try find you. I think you should come on.
Yeah, and I know my Xbox is actually battered because it won't connect to the internet anymore. I'm actually going to see if I can go back on my Xbox One or like my Xbox account and find any messages if they save
Did you add,
online or
did you add him
whatever.
as a friend? Did
And
you
I'll
add
see
him
if I
as a
can put it
friend?
down. I think so at the time, but again, like as you get older, because this is the thing, because he was the same age as me at the time, he would have been an adult like me as well. So you have responsibilities, you don't game as much. Like in reality, I only used to jump on for a game of FIFA, but I'm pretty
Well, I
sure we
might
had
check. I
each
might
other. So
check.
I'll have to go
Well,
back
I
through
might
my
check your
friends
friends
list.
list as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be brilliant if we could get you on and you
Could you imagine reaching
and
out to him?
and
We'll
tell me
probably.
if Lujo really did have a as high kill death ratio as keeps telling me he did.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I actually was a brilliant World at
No,
War
you are.
player.
You are.
I was
You are. You are.
fantastic.
Do you have any more?
No, I think that's my final one. I did have a couple of what do you want me to kind of go true to theme and end on a really kind of depressing one?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, okay. This is going to be super short, right? And it's amazing coincidence, obviously. And again, I don't know whether this is luck. It obviously for the individual, it's humongous luck. So obviously in 2014, there were two plane incidents with Malaysian
Oh
Airlines. Do
yeah,
you remember
yeah,
them?
yeah.
So one of them, I think, was shot down over Ukraine, I believe, and the other one, I think, just went missing. And I still don't think to this day did they ever find any wreckage for that plane? I don't think they ever
They may
did.
have found a couple of bits, but I don't think I don't think they recovered what they would normally do.
Yeah, because yeah, that it was obviously complete mystery as to why it even went down in the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
place. I think, and even still to this day. Now there was a man named Martin de Jong, and he was a Dutch man. He was actually scheduled to take both flights. He didn't take both flights because he changed his tickets last minute because cheaper alternatives came up both
Wow. And
times.
that kind of goes into I think we hit upon this in our conspiracy one, didn't we? Where we said there's always, what makes certain things more real is when people say, "Oh, I should have been on that."
Yeah, yeah. Both in the same year as well. And again, it's kind of what we said about ship disasters as well. Like people say, plane travel is the safest. How many hundreds of thousands, millions of planes take off every year, or however many millions of air miles are done, and you never get an incident. And just by chance, the bloke was due to be booked on both, and fate took him away
But
from
that's the
both of
thing.
them.
Could you imagine the first one? His mind must be thinking, "Oh my God, that could have been me." But you wouldn't necessarily think then the next one the same thing could happen. Do you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah,
very weird one that in the sense of it's obviously very tragic, but what a story for him, you know.
yeah, yeah. In and of itself, I feel like when you have an experience like that, I feel like you must come out feeling blessed by whatever supreme entity you believe in, if you
Yeah,
believe in
yeah, yeah.
any.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So I think we've gone through quite a variety there, haven't we? I think it's interesting what can happen.
Yeah, yeah, this is what I mean. It's weird the culmination of events, and it's true. It's kind of like a butterfly effect thing, where you look at it and you think, what series of events actually did need to happen for me to be in this moment right here? And then when you look back on like the freaky things that might have happened in your life, you think, wow, that's actually a
See,
little bit
what
mad.
I want to do is I want us to get Casting Views hoodies, so wherever we go, hopefully people could say, "Casting Views, Dan and Lou, which one are you?" That's what I want. That's what I want. That's the dream. That's the dream. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed listening to this. Do get in touch. Let us know if you had a particular favourite, or I think even more, I think we'd love to know if there are any other stories out there similar to this, especially if there are any personal stories that you'd like to share with us on it. You can get in touch with us by email at castingviewspod@gmail.com. On Twitter, we're at castingviews. If you've liked this, please do leave us a review. Any feedback is great. We love to hear it.
Good or bad.
Yeah, good or bad. We prefer the good, but we'll try taking the bad one too. And again, we'll finish by saying we know there's a lot of podcasts from which you can choose. So we thank you for listening to Casting Views.